Hey, friends and artists and creatives. We're coming up at 7 o'clock here on Tuesday, and I'm going to take a look at this lighting here. It looks kind of, maybe that'll help. I'm trying not to get too close. Anyways, it's almost 7 o'clock here on Tuesday, and as you know, we're doing the Tuesdays at 7, streaming here on Facebook. And I see folks join as, do you guys ever stream yourselves? When you stream yourselves, what you do is you see on the bottom, you see a little kind of running list of folks that are joining. And so, Sarah, I'm glad to see that you're here, and I know that there's a few others that have joined here right away. But it's about just a few minutes before 7, and so we're just going to kind of talk through. I hope you guys are having a good week. I hope that you had a chance to watch the streaming session last week, or between last Tuesday and now. And that what you find out is that you're finding some useful information. Hey, Matt, I'm glad to see you there, buddy. And what we're going to do is, by the way, is if you're there, I know that there's a share button. I don't know if it's in right there, or I don't know if it's maybe right there on your screen. But I encourage you, certainly there is no expectation that you share this, but you might have somebody, you might have everybody on your list who you believe is would be a benefactor of getting some of this information. Hey, Tim. Hey, Mark. How you guys doing? Hope you guys are well. We're going to just patter here for a few minutes until just a couple minutes after 7. Then we're going to kind of jump into the session, and hope you guys are all doing well. Anyways, what I wanted to do is just, hey, how you guys doing? Hey, Pogo. Anyways, what we're going to do is we're picking up from last week. I don't know if you were here or had a chance to watch last week, but I talked a little bit about improv. Talked about kind of my first experience with it, at least firsthand, real experience with it, and kind of the hook that got me involved and wanting to go ahead and jump in and learn it. Hey, Goose, buddy, how you doing? We're going to wait a few more minutes. According to my watch, it's about 6:58. We're going to give it a few minutes. If you guys find it, hey, Tony, how are you? If you guys find it useful and you want to share it, you could hit the share button. You don't have to share it to your entire friends list. You could share it individually. You could share it to say, hey, I want this to go to this particular person or these 5 people, or you could just send it out to your entire list as well. It doesn't make a difference. But I suppose if you take a look at it, what I'm not doing is I'm not selling anything. So I'm not trying to advertise. There's nothing here that I am, hey, here's your trial offer, and then just send me your credit card and I'll take it further. That's not the case here at all. This is merely just kind of sharing my experience and kind of going back to the beginning of my first experience with improv, and now how I think it's put me at I said it's an unfair advantage. I think it's an unfair advantage to other areas of life. And so the people who are watching come from all areas of life. We even had some folks watch from India. I don't think maybe they were live streaming. They're pretty far off of us. But we had some folks get shared and 2 watchers from India from last year. But what we're trying to do is just go ahead and provide you some basic stuff, some things that I've experienced over the years, give you a couple of the cheats, I think, some of the hacks maybe to use it in real life, and maybe how to employ some of this improv stuff. If you're looking to create a character, I know there's a lot of performers, there's a lot of improv cast members here who are joining in. And if you're one of those, welcome. And we are going to go into that type of information for you. Sarah, how you doing? And Drew Badger, it's good to see you too. But as we're talking through the tenets of improv, and again, how I first experienced it, how I found myself kind of drawn to it, learning it, creating some improv live performance, and then finding it hey, Tater, how you doing? Anyways, I want to go ahead and just provide you some of the information. But as we go into the details, and it's a few minutes after 7, so we're going to jump in. So last week, if you had a chance to watch the video, and if you haven't, that's fine. If you feel compelled, you go back and watch it. I think it was about 25 minutes long. And essentially what it did is it goes into the beginning, where I was first, way back in the late 80s, exposed to improvisational acting. Actually, it was a haunted house, and it was a face-to-face experience with a character that was named Booger. And it was kind of funny because there were some folks that are non-haunt related who had similar experiences with Booger, from Sarah last week actually. But at any rate, when I experienced it face-to-face, I found myself drawn to it. I wasn't looking for it. I just found myself drawn to it. And in a weird kind of way, experiencing that way back in the 80s caused me to do something, and that was to go through that show, go around and volunteer and learn it firsthand from some phenomenal performers, some phenomenal actors, makeup artists, creatives all across the board. And as I did that, as I went around and volunteered and worked many nights and sweat quite a bit and banged myself up and lost my voice performing in front of a number of people here in Ohio and later people around the country, I learned a lot of useful things. I learned how to improv, and I was surrounded by great talent. And so you kind of pick up from all that stuff. I did act side by side with Booger, and I did act with some phenomenal artists. And nobody really was trying to create a model to teach. I think we were all just kind of taking it in, and that's what I was doing as well. After being a performer and having a chance, the great blessing to get out and not only to act here in Ohio, several different areas here in Ohio, but then getting a chance to travel, get on a plane at times, and get out and exercise that improvisational skills out in different areas of the country. I learned a whole lot. And during that process, what I found was that I became better at relationships and thinking fast, interviewing for jobs, maybe being a good role model to my family and the community as well. And I believe that advantage occurred because I had learned improvisational skills. And so it translated out to other things. And as I said before, I think it was an unfair advantage. But before we go on, what I want to do is I'm going to give out my email address twice. I'm going to give it out now. I'm going to give it out again near the end for those folks that want to contact me via email. And it's Roger, Roger Ichabod, ROGERICHABOD at AOL.com. Yeah, I've got a bunch of email addresses, but this Roger Ichabod at AOL.com is one that I've kind of set aside for this improvisational contacts. The reason I'm giving that to you is because there's some folks that say, hey, can you give me some ideas? Or as we talk today, I'm going to offer some resources out as well, just stuff that I've used in the past, and I'll just send that out to you for guys. There's no cost to this. I'm not selling anything. But if you're compelled and you want to contact me, just say, hey, can you send me the character sheet, or can you give me some ideas regarding this or that, or I've got a big interview come up, do you have some suggestions? And I'm happy to help out there. Again, Roger Ichabod, ICHABOD at AOL.com. Yeah, an AOL address. But we went through last week that Booger story, right? And I had shared with you back then the details as to what I had experienced. And if you hadn't seen it, or if you had, I'm just going to do a quick 60-second review. So there were 4 of us in line, my brother, myself, our girlfriends. We paid, I think it was a $4 ticket back at the time. We went through and we paid for our tickets at this haunted house, and there was a full queue line. And if you've ever been to a haunted house, if you've ever been to other shows, and you're waiting in a queue line like you might at an amusement park. There's just people back and forth waiting to get in, and that's how this particular night was. Hundreds of people. I don't know. I would guess maybe if I had to think back, 400, 500 people waiting in line. Well, the four of us paid our tickets, and we're kind of moving in the line, and in the middle of all that chaos and all the lines was a character named Booger. We saw him from afar. Our group of four saw him from afar, and we could tell that he was entertaining, that he was engaging, that he was creating quite a chaos there in the queue line, and he was moving about. It almost felt like he had some group control there, because he was kind of bouncing back and forth and creating all kinds of commotion, entertainment. People were laughing, people were moving away, and as we were moving, the very last person in our line, Amy, was very jumpy. Kind of held us as her human shields. As we were moving closer to Booger, instead of just kind of hiding whatever, she actually pulled out a tissue and held it out, almost as a kind of maybe a surrender flag or a truce flag. Instead of just ignoring it, Booger came and he grabbed that tissue and he used that tissue as a prop to continue to act. As a matter of fact, he turned his back on us, went back into the crowd, continued to act for some time, and at just the right time, he used that tissue, turned it back on us, and went after our group, and specifically after Amy. I mean, after all, you could tell from far away that she was a jumpy one in the bunch. She reacted by running off. He turned and grabbed that same tissue, again, that he had used as a prop in his act, went back in the queue line, and used that to create some further chaos, right? And I remember being drawn to that experience. I'm not talking about, I am talking about, I mean, it was engaging, it was fun to watch, it was, kind of, I want to look, I don't want to look, but at the same time, was drawn to that experience because it was interactive, and although I knew it was something special, I couldn't really put my finger on why it was special. Again, I went around after getting out and finishing out the show, went around and volunteered and worked with some phenomenal folks, improv actors, makeup artists. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, there were some phenomenal folks there, and those were the folks that I learned from. And while doing so, I kind of broke some ground for myself. Again, just kind of hitting some milestones, having a chance to experience it, and I believe that at times was able to be a part of and maybe sparking some magical moments for other people that were in queue lines. One of the things I realized is that depending upon where you're at, customers are very different. So the queue lines in Atlanta were different than the queue lines in Philadelphia, were different than the queue lines here in Ohio, were different from the queue lines in Omaha, and different than even in Detroit. So I mean the groups are very different. But what I will tell you is, although they're different, there's a lot of similarities at the same time. And so what I learned over years and years, and as a matter of fact, if I were to count back now, that's probably 29 years of improvisational experience. But what I found was that there were a lot of folks that were interested in, and just the environment at the time was those shows were very non-profit, and the shows became turned over and rolled into for-profit shows. That's why you see your amusement parks, and if you're here locally, there's a lot of for-profits, and they're pouring a large amount of money in to their advertising, to their budgets. Cedar Point, Knott's Berry Farm. There's big budgets and folks that are putting on shows now. And so as moving from nonprofits to larger shows, the crowd starting to get bigger, and the demand for improvisation grew as well. And so that's where that's where the draw or the demand was created. And it was, hey, we want to find a bunch of people who can entertain a crowd of hundreds, if not thousands of people for a number of hours until they actually get into the show. And so that created demand for that skill. And there was a group of us, sizable group, who were out teaching that. And I was one of those folks. I don't have any magical secrets, But what I did do is I did create a model for which it could be taught, and have taught it to a lot of performers, not only in similar shows in October, but also other shows as well. Medieval fantasy fairs are a perfect example. You walk in and you're in being immersed into an experience, and their characters are built and unique. That's improvisation. I had worked with some improvisation, like mimes. I think I might categorize that in improvisation, certainly. Even though most of the mimes that I've seen, I guess even by definition, they don't talk, but to interact without speech, I think is magical, and I think it's certainly improvisation. But then what I found out is that, as I've said before, I found myself improving in other areas of my life. I found that those improvisational skills really helped in other areas, including the workforce. And I still am in sales, although I probably do more consulting now than sales work. But what I found out is that the skills for improvisational acting actually improved my sales. And the reason being was I was using the same tenets, the same prepare for the expected, and then be prepared for the unexpected. And by preparing for the unexpected, when you get there, you certainly are waiting for those barriers. And if you are prepared, and then your sales go up. If you go into an interview, you expect the expected, right? I mean, there's the most commonly asked questions are out there. You can Google them, and probably at your interview, they're going to ask the same 5 questions they do anywhere. You prepare for those. But then, based upon the ability to improv and the steps we're going to go through over the next 3 weeks, you can certainly prepare to do better. And then, plain old, if you're building an improvisational character to use in a haunt or in a medieval fantasy fair or some other type of theatrical, if you're an evangelist, if you're in those other areas of life where you find yourself, maybe frequently in front of a lot of people, and then I think this improvisation will be good for you. So I talked last week just high level about kind of the three parts that I broke in that booger experience into, but the three aspects that I believe improvisation are the components of improvisation, certainly in acting and certainly other areas of life. And those 3 are stage, go, and engage. I think you're walking this backwards. So stage, go, and engage. Stage, go, and engage. And this week I'm going to be talking primarily about stage. Now, if you saw the title to this streaming session, I called it Tuesday at 7. There's no spaces there. Improv for life. But then I said all the world's a stage, and that's a quote from William Shakespeare. I don't remember which play it was, but I believe that's in fact the case, and I think even back in the Shakespearean days when they were writing those things and all the world's the stage, I think it was true then, but I think it's more so now. If we can get in our basement and we could set up our phone on a tripod and we could hit a button and then we could stream out to everybody in the world, and then we are certainly on stage. If we have a Facebook profile, if we have an Instagram, if we stream on Twitch, if we have a number of profiles elsewhere, if you've Snapchat, and if you participate with others, right, you're on stage. People are watching. And so I think it's important to realize that, but it's also important to make sure that that you realize that's a responsibility, and that's also a great benefit that you are on stage. But it also can be, I think, really potentially damaging, because if you're on stage and if you're a character at a haunt and you're on stage and you break character, then you've just ruined the experience. If your stage is, I have a 3-part interview to get the job, I'm at interview 1, and this is what I'm leading at. I do these things well. These are my strengths. But if I get in an interview and I break character, right, and I'm going to deliver some information that is damaging my interviews, very likely I'm going to get passed over, especially in today's climate. But the stage portion, I think, is a really important one. But in terms of stage, so remember the 3 steps are stage, go, and engage. Stage, go, and engage. And in that stage area, so let's talk about kind of that booger scenario. We'll talk about other folks that find themselves, staging their hunt characters or their other improvisational characters. That character, I believe, should have its own look, its own movement, its own posture, its own voice, its own props, should have a backstory. And so if you're creating a crazed hillbilly, if you're creating a zombies are big, but if you're creating something, right, you want to create something that's striking and that's unique and that is going to draw folks in just by appearance. You want to create a character that from afar, this is even before anybody is face to face with your character, that there is reason to stop and watch. And I think by kind of doing those things and being intentional about it, I think you can create that both as a performer and as part of your real life. Now, there's nobody else in here in the room. I'm in here alone, and I have my, as you can see, if you're taking a look at the posters, everything's backwards. So I realize that you guys can't see the sheet, but in creating characters, I believe that to be disciplined is the way to do it the best. So in terms of improvisational characters, this is backwards to you, I know it, that there's what I believe is necessary, and it's maybe original character worksheet. And so if you're building a character, I think by writing this stuff down, that it's incredibly useful, right? Because it's gonna come up to showtime. You're gonna be in full makeup and costume. There's gonna be a queue line of hundreds of people, and you're gonna be like, okay, where's the motivation? What's my story? What's my look? What's my posture? What are these things? And if you write it down, right, you kind of fold it up and stick it in the pocket of your costume, or you have it in your makeup kit, you pull it out and you can go ahead and take a look at this. If you're not intentional about it, that character is not going to be as effective as it can be. But in addition to kind of writing this stuff down, again, be disciplined about it. This is something that I think you should build. So at the end of the night, and you're putting your costume away or whatever the case might be, and you're like, oh, there were some things here that were really important that I want to document. Write it down, and have kind of a running dialogue here. It sounds like it's work, and it is work. You have to write stuff down. It kind of feels like homework. It is homework, right? Because you're going to do it beforehand. You're going to prepare for it. But if you don't prepare for it, then you're not going to succeed the same route. What I'll also say is it's my observation, and I've been speaking for a long time, but it's my observation that when I speak to a group, and sometimes the groups are smaller, maybe they're less than 10, sometimes they're 100, maybe there are a couple hundred people. What I realize, and this is my own scientific stuff, is that there's folks that kind of gloss over, their eyes kind of gloss over when I talk, and there's some folks who just kind of lean in, their eyes are intent on concentrating, and they're engaged in their hearing. And I would say that what we find out is a small population, I would guess 10%, really go in and go, whoa, I'm going to hear and I'm going to take some of this in and perhaps use some of these things at a later time. And so if you're one of those 10%ers, then get in contact with me. Because if you're one of those 10%ers, and then you'll be the ones that do that extra work. And again, I'm not talking about a lot of work. I'm just talking about a short time of preparation. And by preparing for it, your characters are going to be that much more engaging. They'll be that much more recognizable. They'll be unique. Whether you're doing a kind of a typical character, it'll be so unique and so memorable that people 30 years after it, and I think I saw Booger about 30 years ago, they're going to remember it. They're going to remember the story. But if we're not even, but if you're not in that kind of that improv performance mode, what I believe is if you use those same tenets of improv in your real life, right, and you figure out what your character traits are, and you figure out what do I want people to know about me? what is my backstory that I'm willing to share that will, I don't know, maybe be my passion, maybe that will be my cause, maybe that's where I can maybe give back, pass forward. Whatever that is, you have to be intentional about it as well. Because if you're not, then you just kind of get lost in the salmon stream, right? You'll just be like one of the other fish. But I think if you're intentional about it, both in your character building, your improvisational skills, your medieval fantasy fair character, your artwork, your performance, your life, your business, your position in the community and in your family, position in your churches, and positions that you can have an effect, both negative and positive. I mean, frankly, if you want to use your improvisational skills to go in and stir things up, you can. But I think that, and the reason why I'm passing on my experiences, I think that you really can find yourself an advantage in whatever position you're at, and I certainly hope that you use these skills for to advance yourself and where you're at in life. So we had talked about the booger story, the 3 steps: stage, go, engage. What I wanted to do is say, hey, you got to write this stuff down. You got to do a little bit of preparation, whether it's for the job, whether it's for, obviously, for opening a business, whether it's just, hey, I have a profile, and instead of just going on there and whining all the time, I actually want to start to post stuff that is meaningful and that people might watch. You have to do the work. I have a bunch of these different things. If you're like, hey, I'm trying to launch a business, Roger, what are some of your suggestions? Send an email to me, rogerichabod@aol.com. If you're building a improvisational character, send me an email. I'll send you one of these original character worksheets. If you're just saying, I just want to kind of better myself and prepare myself to do some, maybe to find my cause. I mean, first of all, I think that one of those things, and here's a personal observation, and guys, I'm not scripted here. I'm just talking off the cuff. I have a couple notes here. But I think everybody could probably realize and think back to the point, when we're kids, when we're younger kids, and it comes up to Christmas time or your birthday or some other gift-giving occasion, I think a lot of folks are like, oh yeah, I can hardly sleep. I mean, it's going to be Christmas Eve, and I know there's going to be a bunch of presents down there, and those presents are going to be for me. And you get up and you wake up your parents, and you go down and you rip over stuff. You go, oh, look, a stuffed animal. It's a train. It's a car. It's Hot Wheel, or whatever the gift is, right? We spend those early years kind of just taking in, right? It's what about my gifts? What about my gifts? But I think there's that milestone in our lives, and I know that it happened in my life, and I think it happens in most people's lives, where the me factor starts to dissipate, and I enjoy giving gifts. So I enjoy not only seeing what people are gonna get for me, but I also am really excited because I'm here to give something to my loved ones as well. And so I think that having a cause, having a passion, having a story to share with others is a key to happiness. And so this improvisational, yes, I'm here to help you build characters, right? I mean, frankly, if you want to build a really crazy hillbilly, I can help you do that. If you're looking to build other characters, I can help you get there. But what I'm also hoping is that you find the motivation and maybe some of that insight and can build some skills to then further your cause. And the tenets of improv and becoming good at improv is something that will get you there. Last week, if you watched, I said, hey, if you get a chance, watch that YouTube, maybe some YouTube for Drew Carey's Whose Line Is It Anyways? And most people have seen that. I mean, maybe if you're over 35, if you're under 35, maybe you haven't, but whose line is it? What is it? Whose line is it? I think that's just it, right? Whose line is it? And that is a program, and when you get on YouTube and you check that out, what you're going to find is that you've got 4 comedians that are up on a stage, and when they're up on the stage, they're getting things thrown at them, whether it's a prop or whether it's an idea or it's a song title or it's a song type. Is it country? Is it rap? Is it rock? Is it the blues? Whatever it is, they get thrown all these things, right? These four comedians. And what those 4 comedians do is they then create this act with these things that are thrown at them. And I remember watching it way back when it was on. I couldn't even tell you when it was on. Was it 80s maybe? 80s? 90s? Maybe about the same time that I started improving myself. But whatever the case may be, I think a lot of us thought to ourselves, well, I think that's rehearsed. They're just too good. They must have received that information ahead of time, and it must be rehearsed. It's just too good, and they're too fast. They're too off the cuff, and I think in improv, and as we talk this week and the next 2 weeks about it, I think they are rehearsed. I don't think it's pre-planned, but I think they're rehearsed. I think those guys get together and they learn how to build off of each other, and they are prepared for the expected. Now they know a song's going to get thrown at them. They're like, okay, so we have to prepare for country, we have to prepare for rock, we have to prepare for the blues, we have to prepare for rap, we have to prepare for all these music styles. They may say, we also want to figure out how to have the intonation like Prince or Michael Jackson or the Guns N' Roses, or we want this death metal feel. Well, whatever it is, they prepare for that, and then the day of the show, when they get country thrown at them, they've prepared to improv. When they get rap thrown at them, they're prepared to improv. And then they've done it so much that when they get something thrown at them that they haven't prepared for, they don't panic. They stay cool. They are able to start to build something and slowly look to their partner and hand it off to them and let them continue that story. Now, I'm not a comedian. I don't think I'm funny. I think that's just not me. But those, maybe seeing that, you'll understand maybe what I'm talking about. But could you imagine if you were one of those comedians and you were anywhere, right? And you were kind of thrown in a situation. You're like, oh, we're gonna throw this at you and this at you and this at you. Here's a customer and it's your business, or this is a barrier. Somebody's is going to buy a $20,000 item, but they threw a barrier at you. Be prepared to respond. If you're at an interview and you're like, well, that's not in the top 10 interview question list. They asked me something else. They asked me about my personal life and about this or that. And by preparing I don't know if I lost you guys. It said I was trying to reconnect. So if I lost you for a moment, I apologize. But as we're getting back, as you are in those real life situations, right, and you're met with something unexpected, by training in an improvisational way, you're ready. You're ready to respond better than somebody who's not trained that way. And if you have a character and you find yourself in the middle of a 500 life queue line, maybe several thousand person queue line, and you're portraying a character, right? And the majority of people, customers, respond the same way. There's going to be your top 10 ways to respond. And frankly, those responses are similar across not only states, but also across other states as well. So if you go to other areas of the country, customers respond in similar ways. But when you prepare for that expected, prepare for those expected responses, and then when those unexpected responses get thrown your way, then you'll know how to respond. And if you remember that story from last week, and remember Amy held up that tissue? I don't know whether anybody had ever held up a tissue to Booger. Maybe they have. Maybe they did. I don't know. But from our vantage point, he saw that prop, and instead of ignoring the prop or just kind of coming in, what he did is he stopped, and instead of just going back, he grabbed that prop, involved it in the act, took it back so that the entire queue line could be part of that act, and then came back, scared our group, sent us jumping, sent Amy running, and then went back and used it one more time into the queue line. And so the improv is going to be the ability to respond on cue. Of course, the customers responding to a cue, I think that we should always be prepared to give an answer. I think that by doing some work on the front end, that will be more successful in life than we ever have. At the very beginning, I also said that when you build a character, whether it's a personal character, whatever it is, a improv character, hunt character, other type of character, I'm a big advocate of being striking, not shocking. I think if I want to be remembered, I want to be remembered for being striking. And I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? I could, create something that is shocking, that somebody may call and complain because this character is so shocking. That's not what I'm talking about building. I'm talking about building character. I'm talking about building a character that is striking, that people remember 30 years later because of that interaction, and not for those other reasons. But I suppose, I mean, if you're building a shocking character, that's your prerogative or two. But I encourage you to be shocking, because I think those shocking characters are the ones that live with people for decades later. As we're kind of closing here, and if you've got some questions, I'm going to put on my glasses and lean in because I'm an old guy and I need bifocals so I can see these little writing here on my phone. But save your questions for a few moments. I'll ask for them. I'll kind of go through those. But again, we talked last week about the whole tenets of improv. I talked about Booger in that story. That was the hook that first got me. I went around and learned from some phenomenal actors and creatives and makeup artists, and realized how to build a character by taking those same tenets of improv into my everyday life, into other areas of my life. I thought that was an unfair advantage, and that's what I'm here to share to you. Little personal note, for those folks who know me well, you know that I was one of 4 boys, so I was number 3. So I had 2 older brothers, me, and then I had a younger brother, and I've lost all my brothers. Lost a brother a handful of weeks ago, lost a brother 2 years ago, then lost a brother back, losing track, 2005, I think. But at any rate, they were phenomenal guys. They had great talent. They were as smart as you could ever believe, and they took a lot of information away with them. And so what I wanted to do is, if I were to expire in a year from now, at least you'd say, hey, Roger shared some of that information with me. So that's maybe kind of a motivation as well, as kind of inspired to share the story and share some of my experiences. So hopefully you can take it out and use it to your advantage as well. So the 3 stages that I kind of wrap things up before taking a couple questions is going to be stage, go, and engage. Those are the 3 things. We talked about stage today, which is kind of putting your stuff out on stage. And it should have, as if you take a look at if you're one who wants this original characters, what's your character name, right? I would even say work on an autograph at some point. What is your inspiration? Tell me a little bit about your character. What is your general character description? What is unique about your character? What makes your character striking? What is your background and your story? What's the story about your character? I think you should have a backstory. If you're creating a character, then create a backstory. You should, because if you're going to be out in front of a lot of people, you're going to have to respond to that, because they're going to ask you those questions, and you should be prepared to respond. If you're talking about yourself, what is your backstory? What are those things that make you who you are, that you're willing to share with the public, right? What is your movement and approach? What is your dialogue? And I would say your staging. Where is your stage? If you're in a queue line, you're talking about being in a pen of people that's maybe 500 people, as I said before. If that's the case, find a way to get up, right? So you can elevate yourself. So in a group of 500, you can be seen not by just the small ring around you, but you can be seen by a large number of people. If you can, get mic'd, right? Because by micing, you're going to be heard by more than just the people around you. So think about your staging. And again, if you're not talking about the improv character, then I'm talking about staging your character out in real life. That includes, out in your media profiles. And then certainly, what are your props? What is your? I mean, if you're looking for a character, what's your makeup? What's your costume? What does that look like? I would even then list down commonly asked questions and how you're planning to respond to those. Prepare to respond. And if this were regular theater, right? If this were regular theater, you guys could do this. You could try out for a part. They'd say, oh, you're going to be this character, and this is the voice intonation we want, and this is going to be the look. Traditional theater is going to create the character for you, and you're going to have a a script to follow. And then a traditional theater, it's going to be the script that cues you. But we're not talking about traditional theater. We're talking about non-traditional theater. We're talking about improvisation in life. We're talking about improvisational acting. And in improvisational acting, well, let's go back. Traditional theater. So if you are up on a stage, right, there's what traditional theater would consider or call the fourth wall. And if it's traditional theater and you have your actors up on stage, you have this imaginary fourth wall that separates the actors from the audience. And outside of maybe just hearing a laughter response and maybe waiting for just some of that noise to calm down, in traditional acting, you do not break the fourth wall. What we're going to be talking about as we talk this week and into next week is that in improvisational acting, you're going to very intentionally break that fourth wall. This is not traditional theater. This is real life. This is improvisational acting. So in improvisational, you always break the fourth wall. So today we talked about stage, right? Staging the character, staging your business, staging your person, your personality. Next week we're going to be talking about breaking that fourth wall, and so it's going to be stage, break the fourth wall, go, and then engage. And so we're going to be talking about that as we go next week. Next week's going to be shorter. I've been rambling quite a bit. From my end, it looked like there may have been a few disruptions there, but if I'm hoping you guys are still there. And with that, I'm going to give a couple minutes just to take questions. I shoot them out here, and then even if they come in after the case, I'm going to look back at this to see what was out there, and answer those questions to this feed as well, and get back to you guys. In the meantime, I gave it at the beginning, my contact information, my email address is Roger Ichabod, R-O-G-E-R. Ichabod is spelled I-C-H-A-B-O-D. Roger, R-O-G-E-R, Ichabod, I-C-H-A-B-O-D at AOL.com. Folks will say, where did that Ichabod come from? And it was nothing. It was in high school. I think I was in 10th grade. 10th grade, I hung out with a creative bunch. I was an athlete and an artist, so it was kind of an unusual space to be at in high school. But my artist friends, it was actually a guy named Tim Spuckler, if those of you are watching from Independence. But Tim Spuckler one day just called me Ichabod, and it was a nickname that stuck. And so that was the origin of that nickname, and I've just kind of kept it in kind of creative circles. At one point, I took it on as kind of a improvisational moniker, and I took that on so I could communicate with other improvisational actors in these large queue lines. And so there's no real meaning behind it. It was just a nickname that I was given in high school, and that has kind of carried off. So my contact information again, Roger Ichabod at AOL.com. Pretty much that email address has been up and running for decades, right? Probably for 25 or 28 years. When did email come out? Anyways, way back in the 90s, that was one of the first I used for this kind of creative stuff. But feel free to email me, ask me your questions, ask for original character sheet. I'll pull that out. I'll get that over to you. And then if there's any questions here, I'll be happy to get at them as well. Kyle, I don't know if you're still there, and Jason, I hope that you guys are doing well. If you have anything, shoot it over here real quick. I'll talk for another couple minutes. I've been bantering on here as I look at my watch now, for probably 40. And I hope you guys have found some useful information. The one thing that I talked about before is, I think there's a responsibility that if you're blessed with a talent, that you should share it. And so as you guys, and as I take a look at the people who are watching, I'm like, whoa, there's a phenomenal actor, artist, creative. There's a great friend. There's a successful business person. As I said, there were a couple folks that watched from India last week. I don't know who shared it or how they got to it. But again, I wanted to share the fact that I think there's responsibility to share it. If you've got talent, don't bury it. Just present it out, because that talent is there for a reason. So use it. And again, I'm not seeing any questions come up, so I'm just going to close things out. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you feel compelled, you could share this. You could share it to a couple individuals on your list. You could share it to all your list. And I see my lovely wife, Beth, who isn't listening right now, but she's actually getting ready for a show that's this could be out this weekend. So she's in a kind of traditional theater, and I think that she has a fourth wall that she needs to maintain. Is that right, Beth? Or maybe she'll just kind of bust that fourth wall and go down into the audience and improv. I don't know. But Beth, thank you for joining. I love you. I'll see you when you get home. And oh, by the way, I'm going to go get a pizza. And so if you want me to get you a small pizza, let me know, and I'll bring one home for you. But otherwise, hey guys, thank you for spending some time with me. I am honored that you spend a few minutes on Tuesdays with us. And again, if you're compelled, get in contact with me, share this with your friends, and most of all, have a great week and make a difference in this world. All right.